The other day I was browsing through the competitive WoW subreddit and I came across this post asking about spamming Mythic Plus to improve gameplay. Specifically, the question was, is that the best course of action in order to improve mechanical awareness, rotation, etc., etc.? And that kind of got me thinking, like, how do you as a player improve yourself? And that is quite literally one of the tenets of this YouTube channel, right? Is we want to, when I say we, I want to help you guys improve. So how do I as a player, not a guild leader, not a raid leader, but as a simple player improve? How do I do better? I think first, you have to acknowledge that there is a problem, right? Like, you have to be honest and say, there's an issue, it needs to have a resolution. But how do you even get to that point? Like, let's step back a little bit. Normally, I would say, as a raid leader, as a guild leader, that a raid leader, guild leader, someone from your raid group should be pointing out that there's an issue. Hey man, we got to chat about your DPS, your healing, you're dying in raids, whatever the case might be. But let's say that you're being a proactive raider. You're doing your job as a raider. And this is absolutely your job as a raider, right? If my job as a guild leader or a raid leader is to know the fights and all these other things and the prep work that goes into that, your homework as a raider is to continuously improve. So let's say that you are doing everything that you can, you are being proactive, and you are checking to make sure that there is not a problem before I, as the raid leader, spot it. Or let's just say that you want to edge out that little bit of more DPS. Even if you're the top of your game, you're knocking out the, all the other DPSers, you're number one on details, but you want to get a little bit more DPS. How do we do that? Now, we've already talked about logging encounters, and truly, I think how important that is. But the quick answer here is that you can spot issues with your performance really one of two ways. And if there's more than this, you guys in the comment section below, absolutely let me know. But the two ways that I can think of, either via other players in your raid playing the same spec and class as you, and they're doing better than you, or the aforementioned logs. Now, if a raider is doing better than you, look at what they're doing. I mean, it's as simple as that. Check what they're doing versus what you're doing. And Details does a great job of this. You can really drill into it. And I go into this in my Details video from way back when. Logging, if you have logs for your raid group, again, you can do the same thing. But you can really drill in and see what's going on between that guy and me and what is the difference. How does their rotation compare? How many casts of an ability are they getting off versus what you're getting off? What tricks are they using to edge out DPS, heals, a little bit more survivability? And here's one that might be crazy. Talk to them. Get a relationship going where you and this person, two players are working together to improve. And I've had this happen many times. And the one that comes to mind, right off the top of my head, we had this, it was actually a subscriber to the channel, and he actually hit me up via YouTube, and he said, hey, interested in joining. Cool, we chatted, he seemed like a decent fit, he came in, he played a mage, but one of my top DPSers was a mage, and he was just getting blown out of the water by one of my old school players, just completely wrecking the DPS meters and beating all the other mages. And this guy did his due diligence, and he stepped up and he said, hey, I need some help. Show me what's going on. Where am I screwing up? And those two chatted back and forth in Discord. We had a private channel with the three of us in it, looking at logs, websites, user interface, week wars, all this stuff. And every single week, they're going back and forth, just eking out a little bit more DPS for this new guy. And it got to the point where, initially, new guy wasn't doing so great. He was average at best. And I'm not meaning that to be an insult, but, he was average at best. But then as they started to work together, you could see him starting to climb the DPS meter. You could see him starting to climb those parses where he was maybe getting, a 40, a 30, a 50. Now he's getting an 80%. an 85, maybe a 90%. And them just going back and forth and theory crafting and all this stuff. And it was really great to see. And that competitive, nature between the two of them, where they were trash talking each other. They were, I'm going to get you, I'm closing in. And it was really cool. Good stuff. Now, let's say you don't have another player to bounce ideas off of, or maybe you are that top player, but you still have that drive to improve. What do you do then? And the second option here is logs. Logs are the answer. I've talked about them a ton. I've done a couple of videos on them, but Warcraft logs absolutely are the answer. Now, parses are going to tell you a lot about what's going on in your raid group. Now, again, there's a video about it, but the short version is that a parse compares what you're playing, class and spec, against everyone else playing that class and spec over 2-week period. The higher the number for your parse, the better you're doing, and the fewer people that are doing better than you. If you're not happy with where you're at, there's a problem. So if you are parsing a 40, that means 60% of the mages that play that class and spec, or whatever, are doing better than you. If you're parsing a 90, pretty damn good, but you may be in that situation where you go, how do I get to a 99? How do I eke out a little bit more? Obviously, there's a more incentive, hopefully, for a guy parsing 40%, 30%, 20% than the guy parsing 90. But it all depends on where your drive is to improve. Now, before I move on, I do need to make a couple of things clear that yes, corruption makes things much, much, much more complicated and complex, and not in a good way. Absolutely not in a good way. You could be doing everything right and still get unlucky, or someone could be failing at a rotation. They could be completely wrong and get lucky, and the damage meters are going to reflect that, and it sucks. Now, I can tell you from personal experience, and this is probably not a surprise. I'm sure those of you that are raiding right now in World of Warcraft, you've probably seen this. But I was playing a mage. There's a couple of videos up on the channel of me playing the mage. Again, this top tier DPSer, just blowing everybody out of the water. We pull Heroic Wrathion, and I'm just playing like shit. I don't know why. I can't, in my heart, I feel like I'm doing very well. I got the rotation down. Everything's good. Everything's smooth. No huge issues. Maybe mess up a little bit, but nothing out of the ordinary. And I'm looking at the logs, and I just cannot understand the difference. I don't know what's going on. I can't see that there's a problem. There's small issues that can improve, but nothing that shows a drastic difference between myself and this top tier mage in my raid group. And so I asked him, dude, what the hell's going on? What are you doing? What am I doing wrong? Tell me. And he says, look, I'll go through the logs. I'll let you know later today. He hits me back up later in the day. He says, well, I'm looking here. You cast almost the exact same amount of abilities that I did, almost the exact same time. We were almost in sync. We were almost twins with how our rotation went down. Great. So what am I doing wrong? Didn't have infinite stars at the time. That was the only difference, where he could see a spike in damage and DPS with infinite stars. So you may just get unlucky about it. So I also need to point out that logs can and absolutely will be cheesed, okay? Bring one less healer to a raid group, and suddenly your healers have more to do. Even if it's heroic, if it's farm content, switch one of your healers over to DPS, have them going in all, whatever. Those remaining healers now have more to heal, okay? You're down a healer. Their numbers are going to be higher, etc. Have one of your raiders handle a specific mechanic, their parses are going to be lower. Simple as that, okay? I had a raider that for a long while, she's playing an elemental shaman on Il'gynoth, that phase 2 where you get to DPS the heart chambers. I had her with her 12-second interrupt or 14-second, whatever it is, wind shear, had her interrupt for that very first phase 2, one of the hearts. That way she could do every single one of them, and I don't have to worry about more DPS going over to it, and we can just, bull rush down that first heart, good to go. She got frustrated. of course she got frustrated because her DPS numbers were far lower than everybody else. Her damage, her parse, all this stuff was low. You're doing a specific mechanic. I cannot fault you as a raid leader, as a guild leader, because you're doing this. I can't get frustrated or mad and go, your DPS is low. Also, completely do this mechanic correctly. Okay? You're a special case scenario. It's not like a random, mechanic or something that everyone's going to get. We're literally sacrificing your DPS to make the raid easier for everyone else. As simple as that. So, I think right now, we're at the point where we see there's an issue, right? We've looked at Warcraft logs. We see that somebody's out DPSing us. We know that we're doing something wrong. But here is the ticket. We have to acknowledge that there's an issue. Whether it comes from me, your raid leader, your guild leader, whatever's going on, saying that there's an issue, or you being that good raider that's being proactive, like I mentioned earlier, you have to truly and really accept that there is an issue. I see this all the time. I see this with raiders where I can show them the numbers, I can show them the data, and say, look, man, your DPS is low, your healing's low, you're taking too much damage as the tank, you're standing in bad. And I get excuses. I was lagging, my internet's slow, I changed talents, or I forgot to change talents, or another raider did a thing, and it's really messing me up, or messed me up, or whatever. I had to move because of excuses. No. Don't be that person, okay? Acknowledge that there's a problem somewhere, and then commit to truly fixing it, okay? We need to identify, once we've acknowledged it, what the underlying issue is. What the hell is exactly going on here? Again, as I've mentioned before, Warcraft logs and that compare tool are so very valuable. You can literally see, how many of this I'm casting, how many of that I'm casting. And then you can extrapolate, okay, let's say, going back to the mage example. Fire mages right now, when they crit, they get to do some extra stuff. Great. So, are you doing your rotation wrong? Does this other mage, have, more casts of Fire Blast? Maybe they're getting off more Pyro Blasts, maybe their haste is higher and they're getting off more Fireballs that kind of, chains the whole thing together. Like, what's going on? I can compare my performance and everything that I've done to someone else with that compare tool. Okay? I could find someone that's very similar, see what the hell's going on. Okay. Now, the other one here is that we have websites like WoW Analyzer. So I want to pick on myself a little bit in the middle of this video to show you guys one of the things that I'm talking about. So what we have on screen here is our N'Zoth kill from tonight. Okay. We had 21 people in the raid. We had 5 healers, including myself. I told my healers, look, I'll switch over to Shadow from Discipline. That way we have 4 healers. It's not going to be great, but at least there will be an extra DPS, or we just don't need 5 healers in the raid. We'll move on from there. So I have the logs, and I can see I didn't do great, okay? Right here we are. I parsed 40%. Not the most amazing parse. Knew it was going to be poor, but I can then go to compare. I can find, we can find a player myself. We can search for someone similar. See what happens. We got this guy that's 70%, so significant amount more DPS than I'm doing. We can see his talents, all this good stuff right here. And I can see, if we click on him, what he's been doing compared to what I'm doing, and it is in a different language, but you can see, one of the big things that immediately stands out, he's getting more Void Bolt casts than me. You can just go through here and see what's going on. Now, for a lot of people, myself included, this is normally what I would do, where I would go, okay, Raider, okay to one of my guys, why is this guy casting more X, Y, and Z than you? What's the disparity? We can figure it out that way. Or we can use the aforementioned WoW Analyzer. Same thing, it takes the Warcraft logs URL that we just had, paste it into here, we can click on me, takes a second to load, and I get a full synopsis of what's going on. So I can see here, dots, perfectly fine. No issue here whatsoever. 97%, 98%. We're good to go dot-wise. However, core spells, Void Bolt, which we recognize that that's going to be an issue, and Shadow Word Void were not cast as much as they should have been. Okay, now I know as the fight progressed that I didn't have a very clear sense of distance with my abilities. I had it very much so with the mage where I could very easily judge how far away a target was and know where I needed to stand. Something getting used to with a Shadow Priest. But it's something that I have to work on. That's something that I have to fix. Cooldowns. Again, Shadow Fiend wasn't using it as much as I should. Void Form stacks, pretty decent. Something to improve upon. But I think I got bigger fish to fry here. Downtime, 37% downtime for that fight. Now, that being said, this is one that you really have to understand the fight. Were we waiting for tentacles to spawn after we killed all of them? Yeah, just kind of sitting around, not really doing anything. I could technically DPS N'Zoth, but he has a 99% damage reduction buff, so yeah, I mean, technically, yeah, I could do it. It's not worth it. It's just totally not worth it. And then down at the bottom, we have here, just quick and dirty, what's going on. You're really crappy with your Void Bolt cast. They're not terrible, but they're not great either. It's something to work on. Shadow Word Void, not great, not terrible, something to work on. Shadow Fiend, definitely something that needs to be fixed. Downtime could fix that. And then it gives you a very quick, hey, here's the deal. You can improve your Void form by doing more Mind Blast or Shadow Word Void, more Void Bolts, and then Mind Flay. Cool, okay? That right there gives me something to work on. So data's right here. Pick something, which I can very easily say Void Bolt and Shadow Word Void or Mind Blast. Move forward. Now, the final step here is very obviously to fix the issue. This, I think, is again one of the areas where people get hung up. They know there's a problem, right? They've acknowledged, hey, I'm doing a thing wrong. They've maybe even figured out what that thing is, right? I'm not the top of the DPS meters because my rotation's all jacked up. But they then try to fix it. They don't see an immediate fix. They get frustrated and they give up. You're not going to show up to Raid Tuesday and parse stupid low, right? 10%. And then next week, parse 99% unless there's absolutely something wrong that's happened between this week and next week, right? Like there was a huge change, something happened. It's just not going to happen. A miracle is not going to take place where you parse 10% and then parse 99%. It's going to be a slow increase. Instead of getting overwhelmed by like wanting to get into that fast lane, look at doing better each week. If you parsed, 10% on a boss this week, what can you get to next week? Can you get to 20%, 30%? Where can you get at and slowly work your way up? Fix that one issue if there are multiple ones, okay? One thing at a time. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't go, I know that I'm casting, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, and this wrong. Well, I'm going to fix them all. I'm going to get overwhelmed. I'm just going to, go nuts and get super frustrated and then not want to raid. Work on that first one. Get that one down to where you don't even have to think about it. Then fix issue number 2, 3, 4, etc. Okay? We're looking here at the long game, where you improve yourself over a length of time, not just, immediate fixing it. And then any hurdle, whether it be a new raid encounter, new raid tier, new expansion, whatever, you can just tackle it because you've already fixed the other issues. So anything new that crops up, you can then integrate it into what you've already fixed. And if you do need help, hit up your raid leader, hit up someone in your guild, hit up someone in your raid group. If they value you as a player and the raid as a whole, they will want to help you, right? If everyone does better, the raid does better. Make those small steps to improve, continue pushing yourself forward, and change is going to happen.